Hey everybody, welcome to Sound Bombing. I created this show for people who want to experience a radical, life-changing journey through the sounds of my diverse guests. I hope that each sound you hear on this show will strengthen your faith, encourage your dreams, and challenge you to awaken the greatness within you.
Drop the bombs. Drop the bombs. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We're gonna drop the bomb. Drop the bomb. We come to drop the bomb. Drop the bomb.
This is a journey into sound. A journey which along the way will bring to you new color, new dimension, new values, and a new experience.
LaMarr Shields.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening to us, in your car, on your iPad, on your phone, on your computer, at your grandmother's house, at your abuelita's house, at your grandfather's house, on the basketball court, on the polo field, wherever you are listening to us. I'm so honored and grateful that you decided to join me. You're not here because you heard I do anything amazing. Maybe you are, but I think that you're here because you want to hear about all the brain hacks and the life hacks of all the people that I bring on board who are overcomers, who are going to give you some strategies on how to make some great choices in your life so you don't have to go down that road. Just like last week, for those that are following our show, if you listened last week, you listened to the great Mary Benson of Jimmy and Mary's. Their Shea Butter company is blowing up, a husband and wife team out of Virginia by way of Nigeria in West Africa. So we're excited that she was on. And so again, today is no different. I'm always bringing some amazing guests on. But if you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is the best time to be with me. This is the best time of the day. This is great, great podcasting, not because of me, but because you might have heard about the amazing people that I have on. For my old heads, my old bombers, you know what time it is. We are about to do our deep breathing exercise. And what that entails is we ask you to put your feet on the floor and find a comfortable position, standing and or sitting. But if you're sitting, put your back up against a chair, roll your shoulders back, put your palms on your lap, and your palms are facing out. Of course, you can see someone joining me today. He's going to be joining me in this morning or this afternoon exercise. So let's take our deep breaths. Inhale. We're going to hold it for 3 seconds, and then we exhale. 2 more times. Inhale. We go a little deeper. Hold it 3 seconds. Exhale. The last one, we're going to go deep, deep, deep. So we inhale. Hold it for 5 seconds. Exhale. Bombers, what do we call that? We call that the breath of life. So what that does is that sustains us, that allows us to come back when we're having a chaotic day, that we can always come back to our breath. And what that says is that you're here. We like to clear our space from any negative energy that you may think I may be bringing, or the energy that you may bring in, but we're not bringing any negative energy. But what I want you to keep away is that COVID. I don't want it. You don't. Why is the COVID like an uncle, like that COVID, the Uncle COVID? We don't want the COVID around us, and I'm hoping that you are safe and sound, but we're ready. Are you ready? Listen, I lost everything. I've heard people say that over and over again. This is a phrase that is often heard from people who have hit rock bottom. My good friend Les Brown said, if you fall on your back and you can look up, you can always get back up and move on. But when you hit rock bottom due to substance abuse or any other abuse, or just life showing up, that's where you are, but that's not where you're going to stay. Many people I've come across on stages, in virtual spaces, when I'm talking, have all shared these amazing stories about hitting rock bottom, but some of them stayed down. Some of them stayed down and didn't want to come back up. But most of the people that I came across always came back to the top because they surrounded themselves with many people, many, many great people. Many people tell me these stories of losing everything. I mean, everything because of addiction, but because of hoarding or because of bad relationship. But let me tell you this, addiction is a chronic disease. You all know, if you don't know, I used to work for the Center for Violence Prevention, a CDC-funded organization, and we talked about addiction being a chronic disease characterized by drug seeking and use that is compulsive or difficult to control despite the harmful consequences. The initial decision to take drugs is voluntary for most people. Some people are forced, but repeated, you hear me? Repeated drug use can lead to brain changes that change you to a regular person to an addicted person. You even have people who are functioning addicts, those people that go to work and they do these things and you wonder, how are they still doing this stuff? Because they are what you call a functioning addict. And I've had many of them in my family. These brain changes, though, they can be persistent, which is why drug addiction is real. It is considered a relapsing disease that sometimes put people into recovery houses, sometimes put families pitting against one another, but because it's common to relapse and many people go back to it, and if you know what I'm talking about, that's probably why you're coming close to the speakers. So what does losing everything really mean? What does it really mean? What do people who suffer from drug addiction really lose, or who do they lose? Of course, every person experienced this difficult situation very, very different. That's why my guest today is Ed Kressey. I said again, Ed Kressey, who you may not know, but let me tell you, this brother has been all over the place, but he had a lot of opportunities in life. He went to college. He had a great career. He was named in Fortune magazine as running one of the best companies of home ownership in San Francisco. Yet, he threw it all away and much more, away to 2 decades of drug addiction. He spent months in jail and years in destitution. His final 11 devastating years of addiction to methamphetamine resulted in a harrowing psychosis, including extreme paranoia around the FBI. But after getting clean, I love the comeback stories. He discovered just because you're done with drugs doesn't mean that they're done with you. He continued to battle severe mental challenges, but fortunately, amazing individuals inspired him to pursue a path of personal and self-development around spirituality and giving back. In 2019, FBI Director Christopher Wray recognized him with his Director's Community Leadership Award. His inspiring transformation is in his book, My Addiction and Recovery. Just because you're done with drugs doesn't mean that they're done with you. My next guest on Sound Bombing today is my man, Ed Kressey, is going to share you his amazing story. And since this is September, which is National Recovery Month, he is joining us in the bomb shelter. Ed, welcome to the show. How are you, brother?
Dr. Shields, great to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be your guest.
Hey, Ed, first of all, let our audience know where you're calling in from, and then let us know, how are you doing with the pandemic? I always like to check in with my guests to make sure that they're safe.
Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you. I live in San Francisco, yet I am in Massachusetts during the pandemic. I'm using this opportunity I'm taking advantage of the opportunity before it takes advantage of me.
Now, it's interesting. You said the San Francisco area, but I heard that Massachusetts, I heard that accent real quick. I heard that you all can't cover that New England accent up, man. I don't care how hard you try. I don't care how many degrees come out. It's like New Yorkers, man. And then it's almost like when you all talk to people from your same area, it like comes out even more, man. I'm glad you're in a safe place, man. I'm glad you're in a safe place. Well, man, let's get down to it. There's so much I want to talk to you about. You talking about hitting rock bottom. I mean, your life just was in a tailspin, because of many things in your life. Your childhood upbringing was shocking in comparison to where you ended up. Let's talk about your childhood, and then can you tell us about your life growing up and how that sometimes doesn't mirror sort of how you ended up in the situation that you ended up in?
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Shields. I was a person who had a lot of opportunities given to me. The reason I was given my opportunities, they were unfair opportunities, and let's face it, because of the color of my skin. which is white, for your viewers who aren't on video, and my socioeconomic background, which was privileged. So society gave me a lot of things that a lot of people are not given. I was provided a college education. I worked for, as you mentioned, I worked for a company that was named the best company in America to work for by Fortune magazine. I owned a home in San Francisco. But, going back to my childhood, I was just a weird kid. I was a weird kid. I used to read a lot because escape into the worlds of fantasies were always more attractive to me than the world of reality that was right around me. I was uncoordinated. I couldn't compete in sports or in gym class. I had these weird skin conditions. I was very sensitive. I would cry easily when the teachers yelled. So I was just a different kid. When we look at, Dr. Shields, it's so true what you were saying before about the chronic nature of addiction. It's important too, I've found, to look at what are the root causes, which you allude to also. For me, I found that drug addiction was a condition of comfort. I was comfortable in the role of being a person addicted to drugs, even if I wasn't happy. I was very unhappy much of the time. Again, going back to my childhood, I developed this dream. My dream was to become a writer. I always wanted to become a writer. Going back, because the first times as a little kid, the first times I felt like I belonged, the first times I felt I could bring value to the world around me, those times were often in my English class. When the teacher would read aloud a paper I had written or call me to the front of the room to read my story to the class. These were times I felt like I belonged. I was no longer that bullied kid on the playground. I was no longer the weird kid with the skin conditions who couldn't fit in with the popular cliques or whatnot. English, the classes in English, the ability to write, the ability to break my fantasy worlds of value to my peer group, these were very, very important to me, and that's how I developed my dream of becoming a writer. Unfortunately, when I was around 14 or so, and progressing very rapidly when I was 16, 17, and so forth, I developed an easier, faster way to get to where I thought I wanted to be. Where I thought I wanted to be was fitting in with my peer groups. And that easier, faster way was drinking, intoxication, later on, heavy drug use. These gave me the false senses of confidence. These things, the drugs, the drinking, they gave me the illusions that I could live my dream of being a writer, but even more so fitting in. And to me, one thing that's important to look at is the idea of dreams versus goals. Okay, dreams and goals. For many of us, dreams and goals are very similar, if not the same. A dream is what we want to do. A goal, or a dream is who we want to be. A goal is what we want to do. So a woman dreams of being a business owner. Her goal is to own a business, right? Or a man dreams of being a marathoner, so his goal is to run a marathon. For many people, dreams and goals are very similar, if not almost the same. For the addicted person, like me, our dreams are often things like, we want to feel normal. We want to feel like we fit in. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel comfortable in our own skin. These are the things, and you, Dr. Shields, especially your experience in recovery, you've heard these things time and time again. Hey, I just want to feel, I'm an addicted person. I want to feel like I fit in. I want to feel like I belong. These are our dreams. Yet what happens, and what would happen for me, and for many others, is we adopt goals. So for me, my goals were things like you mentioned. My goal became, I want to work at a biotech company. That's the #1 best company to work for. My goal is that I want to own a home. My goal is to have a big BMW motorcycle that I ride around. Okay, nothing wrong with these goals. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with the goals, but they're never going to help me accomplish my dream. Or it's going to be very hard. No BMW motorcycle, no job in biotech, no home is going to help me accomplish my dream of feeling like I want to fit in. Or even if you dial it in a little bit more, my dream of being a writer. I could accomplish these goals working in biotech, owning a home, but my dream of being a writer always eluded me. And, let's face it, it was because I lacked the discipline I lacked the perseverance. I lacked the confidence and faith in myself.
So what did the people around you say, the people that knew you as maybe a little boy, a teenager, or a college student who knew you had all of these things going for you, great family? What did they say about you when you sort of sunk into this, some people call it a funk image of sin? What did they say to you or about you?
Well,
and then what was your reaction to them?
Yeah, well, they were shocked. They were discouraged, and rightfully so. I can imagine they took it very hard upon themselves. They probably wondered what they had done wrong. They probably wondered what they should have done differently to help me. There was nothing they could have done. Or, you know, it's so hard. And as you probably know, the one challenge of drug addiction is that we believe that when the drug use ceases, the problem is solved. And it's insidious because that appears to be true. It appears, hey, you know, you're addicted to drugs, quit doing drugs, your problem is solved. Yet that's not true at all. What I found is that for an addicted person like me, drugs are not the problem. Drugs are our attempt at a solution. So for an addicted person, we take away drugs, we take away our solution. So getting back to your question, what my family and my friends thought was, hey, we get Ed clean off drugs, Ed will be fine. And, you know, even I believed that at the time. So my family and friends, they put forth an effort to get me off drugs, believing, and they can't be faulted for having believed this, they believed that once I was clean off drugs, things would be fine. But actually the opposite is the case. When we sink into addiction, at least for a lot of us, when we quit doing drugs, it makes things worse, at least at first. You know, because now with no drugs, we have no more solution. We have nothing left to tamp down the fact that we feel like we don't fit in. The fact that our dream is to feel normal, and we don't feel normal without drugs. Or our dream is something like to be a writer, but we don't have the discipline, perseverance to be a writer. Quitting drugs, the lack of fulfilling our dreams is still there. And now there's no more drugs to mask the pain. So these are some of the things that my family and friends went through. And, you know, as an addicted person, when it came to putting on a facade, a false front, I, like many addicted people, could do that very well. I could present myself to my family and my friends. I could put forth a sense of humor. You know, I had something of a sense of humor, so I could tell jokes here and there and people would laugh. I could talk a little bit about my job with the biotech company, with Genentech, and how they were treating me well, which reflected upon a good performance. I could put forth various things that would put up this false.
So you became, and said you became an actor. You taken on several roles. Because you became other people you created these characters for other people in your relationship. Is that a fair assumption? Because you said I can put on these fronts and I can do these things and people would think everything was okay.
That's a perfect way to put it. I became an actor. I fooled my audience, and my audience is myself. I fooled myself and I fooled others. Now,
Ed, are you able to see that in other people now? Since you've gone through this transition, are you able to see that in other people?
I believe that I am, yet the challenges as addicted people, we get very good at fooling ourselves and we get very good at fooling others.
So when was your aha moment? So you had all these people supporting you, which sometimes can be rare in some instances, but you had a lot of people supporting you and they wanted to help you go through this process. But when was your aha moment? And when you said, as a great civil rights leader, Fannie Lou Hamer said, you know, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, enough is enough. When did you realize that you had to get it together? Because you have a very remarkable story. You have several aha moments. Talk about that with our listeners, because you may want to remind somebody of the aha moment that they might have just had and allow it to pass on. And they may be waiting for the next one to come. And that next one may not come. It may come when you expire or somebody else expires.
Yeah, very, very well put. My aha moment one of them came in 2007 when I pushed away everyone. All the people who loved me, all the ones who tried to help me, my family and friends, I pushed them all away. I was living in a little flop house hotel. In the hotel, there was a sink in the corner in my hotel room. The sink was where I would ash my cigarettes, where I would wash my clothes, and where I would urinate. You know, I had about the only clothes I owned were this filthy tuxedo that I would clean with shoe polish. And I know it's ridiculous, but I'd worked at the strip clubs in San Francisco in the North Beach area where I lived. So I had to wear a tuxedo. And even the strip clubs, to their credit, they had given me a chance. They had given me a job, and I made them pay for the chance that they gave me. I was a terrible employee. So even the strip clubs that had given me a chance, I pushed them away. I was steps away from long-term homelessness, incarceration.
So Ed, as you replay this in your mind, and I'm sure you've done it over and over again, like what's going through your mind as because you're a writer, you create a very, very good image for me. I felt like I was there. I saw the light, the hotel sign, vacant, not vacant. There's certain smells in there. As you're saying this right now, what goes through your mind when you think about where you were at that time?
What goes through my mind is just a sense of gratitude for the amazing people who helped me. So many women and men and organizations believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. So many people saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, and that allowed me to work very, very hard. I would, for example, I joined a neighborhood political campaign. Some close friends of mine, Joe and Erica Aliotto. They lived in the North Beach area of San Francisco. Joe, his grandfather, had been the mayor of San Francisco. Joe and Erica, Joe was running for San Francisco supervisor, which is sort of the equivalent of a council member. We call it supervisor in San Francisco. So here Joe is, a young guy. He's a partner in a law firm, or he was working in a law firm. He's running for elected office. His wife, Erica, amazing woman. She was an executive at one of the big tech firms. On top of all that, they were having their first child. Their first child was due in November, right around Election Day or a little bit afterwards. Nevertheless, Joe and Erica Aliotto took me in. They treated me like a member of their own family. They allowed me to work on their campaign. They gave me the keys to campaign headquarters so I could unlock the place in the morning and close it up.
Now, did they know about your addiction at this time?
That was the thing. They believed in me. They saw something in me. So eventually, whereas before I tried to hide my shameful past, or what I felt was my shameful past, I wanted to keep the past buried. But like they say, we don't want to bury the past. We don't want to dwell on it. We want to learn from it. So because of Joe and Erica Aliotto and many others, I was able to be forthcoming about my poor choices. I was able to be forthcoming, and in doing so, as I admit my mistakes, as I talk about my history, hopefully I do something to remove stigma for others so that others can be forthcoming too. They say we're only as sick as our secrets.
So you are. So, well, speaking of secrets, when it comes to addiction, what is the one thing people don't understand about addiction? Like, what is the one thing that that there's a myth that they just may not understand about people who have some form of addiction?
What I found people don't understand is, like we were saying, drugs are not the problem. Drugs are our attempt at a solution. It's so tempting to believe that for an addicted person, you take away the drugs, the problem is solved. No, the solution is removed when we take away the drugs. I believe that the one largest misconception about drug addiction is that drugs are our problem. They're not. They're usually our attempt at a solution.
Wow. Well, I know from my great producers, when they sent us all the information to read about you, and it was a lot to go through. Thanks for sharing. I know that you have a very controversial, and we like controversy on Sound Bombing, a very controversial answer to the question of what is the best way to help a person struggling with an addiction. And can you explain what that controversial statement is, that as it relates to other people who answer that question about helping or supporting each other through their addictions?
I think the answer is controversial because people generally don't like to hear it, which is that if to help a person, pray for the person. Pray for the individual. Whether you're praying in the form of you have a faith-based system of beliefs, or whether you believe in something like karma or the universe or a great spirit, or whether you don't have any of those beliefs and whether you just choose to believe in the power of thought. Thought has incredible power. And the thing with an addicted person is it's so hard to tell if our actions or our words, even if they're very well intended, if our actions or words are going to have a positive effect. For example, I remember people tried to help me by giving me some money so I could buy a suit to go wear on job interviews. So people gave me money, honestly intending that their actions would help me. Dr. Shields, what do you think I did with the money that people gave me?
I know you got a hit.
I put it in a glass pipe.
Indeed.
That's it. So, what I believe, it's so hard to tell whether what we say or what we do is going to help a person who's struggling with addiction. But our thoughts have power. And this is back to, we don't need to go into a long discussion of quantum physics or the science.
What I do know about you, spirituality and meditation are the means you most credit with lifting you from the depths. What suggestions then, and you can go deep here, what suggestions do you have for our listeners looking to start or to deepen their practice, not only just around addiction, you can talk about how it helped you, but just a general practice of meditating, spirituality, and the connection to quantum physics?
Yeah. Understand that the spiritual presence does not make hard terms with those of us who seek her or him or it or whatever term we choose to use. Mm-hmm. So when we seek spirituality, that spiritual life isn't going to make hard terms with us in general. We don't have to read thousands of pages of spiritual texts. We don't have to listen to hours and hours of persons discussing spirituality. There's nothing wrong with those things. They're fine to do. But when we open our hearts to the possibility of spiritual presence, or when we further open our hearts, when we further open our minds, that spiritual presence doesn't make hard terms with us. It's like C.S. Lewis wrote.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis wrote that to speak of a person searching for spiritual meaning, or I think C.S. Lewis writes, to speak of a person searching for God is like speaking of the mouse searching for the cat. Right? A mouse doesn't have to search for the cat. All the mouse has to do is go run around the floor. The cat will find it. Yes. So, when we put ourselves out there, when we make ourselves available for that spiritual presence in our life, whether it's God or whether it's a great spirit or whether it's the universe or whether it's just some intangible thing like gratitude, love, kindness, generosity. These things are forms of spirituality. When we make ourselves available, when we tune our hearts and our minds into that spirituality in our lives, it finds us. And that's the most important thing we can do, at least so far as I've been taught.
Well, I know your daily practices are a major part of your ongoing recovery. How did your daily practices evolve, and what advice do you have for listeners seeking to start or maximize their effectiveness of their daily practice? Because I always believe my motto is, if you win the morning, you win the day. And Dr. Wayne Dyer also talks about in his work, he said, what you're seeking is seeking you. And like the same thing with the cat and mouse piece. So let's talk about your ongoing practice. Because I know somebody's listening is like, oh yeah, I'm an addict, and he makes it seem very, very simple. It's like when you watch these movies and you have to start with the bad guy, and then he end up, at the end of the movie, everything is okay. You only have like 2.5 hours or hour and 30 minutes or 20 minutes in a sitcom, and we think life is that fast. I know from working with folks that are dealing with addictions, not just adults, but young people who I'm constantly working with and speaking to, whatever the addiction may be. It could be sex, food, it could be video games, what have you. A daily practice is very, very important. I don't want people to think that, oh, you just snap your fingers, because again, you're giving us a quick version of when you were sharing a story about being in that hotel. To me, it was like 5 minutes, but in your world, it was like forever. So let's talk about your daily practices and how they've actually evolved, and how you are constantly working on yourself so you don't then go back into that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. The daily practices are so important. It's the foundation. Build a home without a foundation and a strong wind comes along, chances are pretty good that home will get knocked down. When we're overcoming addiction, those strong winds are going to come along. We're going to be buffeted by forces. We're going to have our own insecurities, our own resentments. We're going to have outside forces attacking us or seeming to attack us. So we need that strong foundation. And that's exactly what those daily practices are. They're different for everyone. Meditation is beautiful. I've been meditating almost every day for 12 years. Meditation is like taking a glass of water. You hold up a glass of water and you take a spoonful of dirt. Okay, now imagine you drop a spoonful of dirt in that glass of water and you stir it around. You can't see through that water anymore. It's too cloudy. That glass of water is like our mind. And our mind, the dirt is like the daily vexations. The dirt are the people who annoy us. The dirt is the regrets we have about the past. The regret are the demands upon our intentions, upon our attention. That's the dirt being stirred around the water. Meditation is like holding that glass up and letting that dirt settle. And as we meditate, that dirt starts to settle and our minds get clear. And that's how we can see clear paths to things like spirituality. Or that's how we can understand that our time upon this earth is limited. And we start to ask ourselves, what do I want to look back upon when my time on this earth does end, as it someday will, not for years and years and decades, at least in my case and yours and for many others. But, our time upon this earth will come to an end. We can ask ourselves if we believe in the next stage of the journey.
So when you were first introduced to these practices, and walk me through that, when you were first introduced, because I think about when I took my first yoga class, I took my first chakra class or breathing class, and I remember like, man, these people in here are strange as hell. Like they want me to do what? And they want me to do what? And first of all, I was the only person of color, Ed, in the space. Like all y'all white folks want me to close my eyes. I ain't falling for this. Be very, very clear. I am not doing it. You're not going to force me. So walk us through how you felt when you were introduced to these practices, because again, when I bring people on here, some people, you always have those outliers, and you need those outliers, like the outliers who said to you, Ed, you're going to go back to where you were, you in the gutter and this was going to happen. Those outliers sometimes motivate you. Sometimes they bring you down. And I think when I bring people on here, I think there's some listeners like, yeah, they're wealthy because they're wealthy. No, they're wealthy because they did the work. Yeah, they're successful because they're successful. No, they're successful because they did the work. I always tell people success leaves clues. Just follow the things that people do. And like you said, you don't have to go to a certain place. Tell people you don't have to go to India or Indiana to find spirituality. Now, you may find it in India and Indiana, but that doesn't mean you need to physically go through there. So walk us through those practices. When they were introduced to you, how did you respond? Were you open and say yes? Were you resistant? Or were you half and half? Was it a hybrid model, as we're using that word quite a bit nowadays?
It was definitely a hybrid model. I would say I was much more resistant than I was accepting. It's so important what you say about community. I found my way into communities that believed in me, that accepted me, yet still I resented them. Still I pushed them away. It was very important to me to apply myself, and that gets back to the daily practices. That's what daily practices are. They're the application, they're the discipline of meditating every day, practicing spirituality every day, of writing every day. I wanted to become a writer, but even if you don't want to become a writer, journaling is so important. Journaling longhand, that connection between the mind and the hand when you're writing with a pen, not necessarily on a computer. You start to reveal yourself to yourself. Believing in yourself is so important. You mentioned Les Brown earlier in the show. Les Brown has a quote I think of all the time. He says that making his first million was easy. The hard part was believing that he could do it. Once he believed he could make $1 million, he was able to do it. So we got to find a place when we're struggling with addiction, or when our loved ones are, where we believe it can be done, where we believe we can triumph, we believe we can overcome. And daily practices allow us to instill that belief in ourselves. We meditate for 5 minutes, the next day we meditate for 6 minutes, the next day 6 minutes again, whatever. We start to develop that belief in our abilities. And that leads those small victories, those 6 minutes of meditation, the 10 minutes of journaling, the 20 minutes of working out or whatever we do. That's the foundation for those big leaps, which are leaps to things like not using meth anymore, not drinking anymore, overcoming our addictive behaviors.
So Ed, what were you looking for? Like, what was missing in your life that you needed a substance to sort of fulfill that void that was in your body, in your bank account, in your home, in your car? What were you missing? And yeah, what were you searching for?
Ultimately, God. Ultimately, belief in the spirituality, and that manifested itself in my dream of writing a book. All my life, since I was, 12, 13 years old, whatever, my dream was to write a book. My dream was to be a writer. I never applied myself. I never put forth daily practices. I never had that foundation. I never in any meaningful way pursued my dream. So for your listeners, if you're struggling, ask yourself, what has your dream been? since you were a little kid or almost as far back as you remember, what is your dream right now? What is your dream in life? And how is your addictive behavior tamping down the pain that you feel because you don't pursue your dream? And for whatever reasons you don't pursue your dream, they may very well be legitimate reasons. You know, mine were, I had a career, I had a motorcycle, I had relationships or whatever. These are fine things. But eventually, because I didn't pursue my dream, I got to the point where I had nothing of a material nature. I had no more relationships. I had no more motorcycle. I had no more job, and I wasn't going to get a job where I was at. So, you know, for me, that whole was basically I had no spirituality or a very, very limited belief in something of a spiritual nature. And the way that manifested itself was I didn't pursue my dream of being a writer. Writing, I always felt, was my way I could bring my best self to the world. And that was another way that spirituality manifested itself in my daily activities. How can I bring my best self to the world? How can I give something back to this society that gave me so many unfair advantages? Writing turns out to be one answer.
So what would you say to your younger self, Ed, if you can step outside of your body and stand side by side and look at the Ed right now in 2020, as opposed to the Ed, let's just say in 1990 or 2000, what would you say to your younger self as you look at that person?
You're being generous. A younger person was more like 1982, but thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Shields. I would say pursue your dream. Be a writer. Don't worry about the money. Don't worry about the job. Don't worry about the career. Don't worry about what people tell you. People try to protect you from becoming your best self. That's the nature of human beings sometimes. They're well-intentioned. They're trying to protect us from failure, but inadvertently they protect us from success.
So speaking of success, you did fulfill that dream of becoming an inspiring writer, and you wrote a book, My Addiction and Recovery. Just because you're done with drugs doesn't mean that they're done with you. If I were to open this book, and I wish I had a copy, I know my producer had gone through the book, what are some things that I should expect to fall out of that book as I'm reading it?
Readers can expect to get an understanding of what are the root causes underlying addiction to drugs. Readers can identify with the person whom you might see shambling the sidewalks or lurking in doorways of your own city or town. You might encounter some person having screaming matches with people who ain't even there, who hasn't showered or brushed his teeth in months. I was that person. So when you ask yourself you ask yourself, how did circumstances happen so that person got where he or she is? You'll get from my book an understanding. You'll see the story behind the human beings who are homeless, who are struggling with addiction. You'll get a pathway out. You'll see a clear way to escape from drug addiction. You'll see that via 12-step programs, empathy for others. You'll also get a very strong sense that triumph is possible.
Go ahead, keep going.
I was just going to say, you will understand what it's like to be at the very depths of addiction and hopeless states of mental health challenges, or at least very, very close to it, because that's where I came from. Yet you will also see that despite those very troubling circumstances, we can triumph and we can bring value to our communities, our family, and those close to us.
What are some of the most compelling stories that you met out there, man? You in Skid Row, which is Skid Row America, not only just in LA, all over, but what are some compelling stories, or who are some compelling people that you met along those journeys that were like, if life didn't show up for this person, they would have done some amazing things, but life showed up for them in a different way?
Dr. Shields, you perfectly described the men I've had the good fortune to work with in Pelican Bay State Prison. Pelican Bay and High Desert State Prison, these are two of the most notorious state prisons in California. Yet the men I've had the opportunity to work with are some of the most beautiful human beings that I've encountered in my life. And these are men whom I'm certain that if they'd been given the same opportunities as me, they would have turned out fine. They would have turned out fine. This in no way is intended to condone the acts of people who, like me, made mistakes. Yet I've learned, and these men have opened my eyes, that when I was 8 years old, I was going out to the beautiful sunlit woods and to the swimming hole down the street of my country road here in idyllic Massachusetts. Yet these men, when they opened their front doors, when they were 8 years old, they would find people bleeding to death from stab wounds right on their front porch. Or they would walk to the corner and be surrounded by the street gang, and their choice was to either join the gang or get stomped by the gang. You know, these are the lives that many people in our society are forced to live. I wasn't. You know, I had a lot of opportunities, and you saw the mess that I made out of my life with drug addiction. So to get back to your question, some of the most amazing, inspiring individuals I've encountered are behind the walls of our prisons. And I feel, you know, we as a society, we serve ourselves best when we understand that when we give second chances to some, we often end up giving second chances to all. Second chances benefit the giver, society, as much as the receiver, if not more so.
Well, Ed, man, I appreciate the amazing work that you're doing, giving back, someone who's come out of addiction and decided to give back. How can our listeners get a copy of your book, My Addiction and Recovery? Just because you're done with drugs doesn't mean it's done with you. And how could they get in contact with you if they want to have a deeper conversation about addiction, or about recovery, and about moving forward with their life?
Well, thank you so much. To get my book, the quickest way or the easiest way is probably to go to my website, www.edkressy.com, www.edkressy.com. You can get my book. And if you email me, my email address is ed.kressy@icloud.com. If you email me and say that you listened to Sound Bombing and you heard me and you bought a copy of my book, what we'll do is on your behalf, we'll donate a copy of my book to an incarcerated person who's turning her life around or his life around. You can also find me on social media. My name's pretty unique. I'm easy to find. Reach out to me at any time if you need help, if you're struggling, if your loved one's struggling.
Well, Ed Kressey, we appreciate you joining us in the Bomb Shelter. Part 2 of the show is what we call the Super Bomb questions. These are questions that people want to know they want to know a little more about you, not just about your work, but about you as an individual. So I ask these questions and I'm asking you to respond to them as quickly as possible. Brother Ed, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. What is your favorite word?
Love.
What is your favorite quote or Bible verse?
His Bible verse is, don't be afraid of those who kill the body and then can't do anymore. I believe Jesus said that.
What is your superpower?
My superpower is every day I'm a little bit better able to control my thoughts.
What brings you to tears of joy?
Tears of joy, seeing the accomplishments of others, seeing that I can do something to inspire others to accomplish their dreams.
What brings you to tears of sorrow?
Tears of sorrow, men who are incarcerated because society gave them different opportunities than society gave me.
What's your spirit animal?
My spirit animal, wolf.
What do you wish you had more time to do?
More time to meditate, more time to reflect and practice spirituality.
What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made?
Unifying cops and communities affected by incarceration, two of the most polarized groups in society, yet by unifying these groups, we can heal our society, make our streets safer, and our children's futures brighter.
Outside of your biological responsibilities in the morning, walk me through your morning routine.
Up before dawn, 4 a.m. or so, doing breath work, doing meditation, cup of nice strong coffee, creative writing for about an hour, then working on doing work related to criminal justice reform and uniting cops with communities affected by incarceration. There's great work being done on both sides.
Yes. If you were in the Mr. America talent competition, what would your talent be? My
talent would be eating ice cream. I can eat ice cream like no one else can.
Well, Ed Kressey, man, brother, thank you for joining me in the Bomb Shelter. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for using your life as a sacrifice to give back and allowing us to look at all the challenges and the triumphs and the perseverance that you've had in your life and continue doing the work that you're doing with law enforcement and the community. So I appreciate you, brother, for joining me in the Bomb Shelter today.
been my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks to your audience.
I also want to thank my amazing engineer, Alexander Blanc, my super duper producer, Nicole Klempaka, Supremacy for our theme music, and all of you for listening. I can't do it without you. If you want to know more about me, go to drlds.com. If you want to find out about our merchandise, you can go there and check out the merchandise. If you want to find out where I'm speaking or any of my books, everything is there. If you want to know more about me, check it out. And as always, believe something wonderful is about to happen, but some people miss the message because they're too busy looking for the mess. Thanks for tuning in, and you've been listening to Sound Bombing. Peace.